Hello and welcome to Leadership Lights, the first of an occasional series that Helen and I are doing together. We love our conversations and our regular conversations about leadership, and we thought actually other people might be interested in what we have to say. So here we are. Helen, do you want to say a little bit about you and maybe about Leadership Lights?
I am Helen and I have undertaken some roles of leadership in mainly adult education. I've worked in for the Prince's Trust as a deputy manager. I worked in a small independent adult education organisation and also in a slightly larger adult education organisation local to where I live in Sussex. Um, Through my experiences and my story, I became interested in leadership and my own leadership journey, but also others and supporting others in leadership. Um, so, probably 5 years ago now, Lou and I had a conversation or a sparking of a conversation, and it led me to writing blogs about leadership. And we kind of just developed from there. And that's where we are today and having a chat about leadership and where that will take us next. So, Lou, tell us a little bit about yourself and your views on leadership.
Can't believe it was 5 years, but it was, and it was because it was lockdown. And in lockdown, I and others co-founded the joyful educators movement, Joy FE. And that shared leadership of Joy FE was such a learning experience for me. I hadn't ever been a leader in a conventional sense. I'd never sat at the top of a hierarchy or even near the top, but I'd led teams, I'd led projects, I'd led work, I'd led communities, I'd led campaigns. And Joy FE really helped me understand what sort of leader I wanted to be. Um, and we talk in Joy FE about the goose leadership, about taking a turn at the point of the V, how geese are in the sky and lots of other things. And you and I had met before through equalities projects, hadn't we?
Hmm.
Reconnected during that time and began these conversations. So here we are, Leadership Lights, and you found a beautiful video to kick off our conversation.
Yeah, well, actually, through those Joyful FE sessions, you introduced me to someone called Karen Warrand, and her first book, The Lightmaker's Manifesto. And she writes, I suppose, an inspirational blog every that comes out every Monday. And for the new year, she shared this one, and it was just perfect, I felt, to kick off our very first conversation together. So it's what light will you bring to this year? So if you're going to share, Lou.
Brilliant. Still fumble the sharing even after all these years.
As we say hello to a brand new year, here's a thought to consider. What light will you be? Maybe you'll sparkle, practice full-throated self-expression, dazzle with talent and brilliance, and commit to bringing joy and delight. Or perhaps you plan to shine, strive for personal excellence, commit to fighting for justice and equity, challenge institutions and others to do the same. Or maybe, like me, this year you'll focus on glow, emanating warmth, focusing on radical belonging, and determined to practice kindness as a power move. However you choose to radiate, remember this. This year, as all years do, promises change and challenge. And so, with apologies to Mahatma Gandhi, be the light you wish to see in the world. Happy New Year, everyone. As we say hello to a brand new year,
And you have
here's a thought
Muppet,
to
Helen. A good job. It's a good job that we are very informal, isn't it, here?
Fine. All of the little glitches, as as Karen said, the changes in the world that we have to navigate and go along and things like that as well. So, Lou, what light will you be this year?
Hmm. I've really been thinking about this. It was just early in the new year when you sent me that video, and I mean, there's something in every one of those. I know it's not sparkle. Sparkle feels like an energy that I've had before, particularly in that lockdown period, that Joy FE period, that joyful energy. And I was very, I still work with joy. I hope I'm not less joyful, but that pushing out, that feels like an energy that's not right for me at the moment. Shine, I got a bit stuck on, being the best you can be. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but perfectionism is the enemy of, well, certainly change and momentum and change making. But that sense of really pushing organizations around equity, around justice. And I'm going to come back to that one as well. And then glow, interesting, isn't it? Like that feels more personal and it's also professional. I think last year my word of the year was awareness. I really focused on glow. I focused on radical kindness, belonging, empathy. And I actually ended the year a little bit worn out because I reflected that in all of that, I'd dropped my boundaries a little bit. And I'd listened so well that I hadn't given people a chance to listen to me. So I still hope I will continue to be kind. I'll still work on that radical belonging. I love that phrase, and that's a lifelong work in progress for me as an individual. But if I go back to shine now, my word of this year is consistency. And I think being the best I can be in a consistent sense, in a calm energy sense, not in the sparkle high energy sense, but just pushing on forward, getting the work done. And as Karen teaches us, bit by bit by bit, we have to caretake and safe keep our own light, don't we? And then bit by bit is how change happens and allows us to keep the joy in it. So it's a long answer to a very simple question, but I am settling mainly in the space of shine this year. What about you?
Well, it was interesting, the three words of sparkle, shine, and glow. And for me, and I did it this morning when I was getting dressed as well. I put my sparkle season socks on this morning, but that's because I do like a sparkle. And a friend of mine, we always say that we're like cuckoos in the nest, or maybe like your bowerbird as well, Lou. But we go for the shiny things, or the that sparkle. Um, but I often think that I try to sparkle, maybe not in my personality, but often in what I'm wearing. So I always will try to wear something bright
Hmm.
because I feel that brings that little bit of sparkle. But I know what you mean, that if you're sparkling all the time, that can take energy out of yourself. And something that we've both learned is that self-care is so important, especially when you're leading a project or momentum or something in that leadership. So I think it is great to be joyful and dazzling, but you can't do all of that all of the time. And you've got to recognize that. So, shining, that striving for personal excellence and commit to justice and equity. That sounds a lot. It sounds like a big lot to take into that. And in the back of my mind, I've always got you saying that excellence is not a value.
Mm.
And I agree. Yes, we all want to be excellent, but those bumps in the road cannot always make us be excellent. And we have to learn how to adapt and change to those. So if something comes along, and this is my kind of learning as well over the past 5 years, having been made redundant twice, is that you have to learn from the experiences that you're doing, reflect, and look at where you're going to go next. So yeah, I don't like that idea of striving for excellence or personal excellence, but I do like the justice and equity bit on Shining.
Mm.
That glow, and this is probably where my glow and sparkle comes from together, is that kind of emanating of warmth, radical belonging, and determined to practice kindness as a power more. Um, and I think sometimes we misuse that word kindness, and it becomes a bit of a badge. But for me, it comes back to ensuring that you stay true to your values and what are your values. So I think for me, yeah, it comes to while I love a sparkle, I think it is that glow. Um, and my word for the year. So I also have a word for the year. My word for the year this year is believe.
Mm.
And I think that is a little bit about kind of ensuring that you believe in yourself, but believing in um and maybe a hope for the future as well.
Mm.
What do you think?
I'm thinking about that word believe, and for any Ted Lasso fans out there, that is a super powerful word that runs through the whole piece. And I've already seen Ted Lasso leadership courses advertised, and I went to a Ted Lasso, the Lasso Way workshop last year in Glasgow. But yeah, there's a lot to take from that in terms of leading a team. What happens when belief gets torn up? Um, what happens when you stick it back together, but it don't look as good as it did, you know? I think that's such a powerful word for the year. And you're right about, I've always really challenged excellence as a virtue. Excellence is an aspiration. There's nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong with striving for excellence. Just don't call it a value. And I know that there's an organization I work with that's very, very dear to me, led by people who are very dear to me, where excellence is a value. And we'll just have to agree to differ, I think, on that one. And it's interesting that you mentioned the bowerbird. So for people who don't know, the bowerbird is my companion, one of my companion species. A metaphor, of course, but more than a metaphor because I've got about six of them in the house. People send me little bowerbirds, which is just beautiful. And he, in his real life, hops around on the forest floor picking up blue shiny things. And I think it's great that you made that connection with sparkle because it's great to sparkle sometimes. It's great to look for the sparkly things. That's what enlivens us. It's what wakes up our potential, our joyful change-making energy. But like a sparkler, we can't sparkle all the time. And I just want to show you, Helen. Yeah. Here
Oh,
is that's still my Christmas tree. And what I do on 12th night every year, I take everything off it, the coloured lights and all the baubles, and I put the warm white lights on. And I keep them up till, well, depending on your tradition, it could be Candlemas, it could be in bulk, it could be St. Bridget's Day. and which apparently is an older tradition than taking everything down at 12th night. And it just keeps the sparkle, it keeps the nature. I walk in the house and I smell the pine. And it just, I think, particularly during the winter months, those little bursts of sparkle in leadership can be really powerful. And they come from, I think, kindness as a power move. So the appreciation that we give, the time taken to tag people in on social media, to notice what others are doing, whether that benefits you or not. It's the put in that kindness, that power kindness out into the universe. It's the making of generous assumptions that actually might cause another person, a person who you perhaps don't even know, because you put this affirmative message out, to think, oh, that's what I do. That's what I feel really affirmed. I'm going to go and do some more of it. And we were talking a little bit, weren't we, before we even went on online, about how leadership is not just about the internalness to the organization. It's about external in different ways as well. And I want to ask you some more about that, because I know you've been doing some thinking around that. But just to say that I went on my first ever leadership course last week at the age of nearly 60, because I'm not the sort of leader in hierarchies that people would invest that sort of training in. But it's an investment that I have made in myself. And one of the key learnings from that, because it was about environmental sustainability, is we need a new operating system. And change making, which is my work now with the Green Change Makers, is a second operating system within organisations where leadership is set up to deliver what we've always had to deliver. So in the past, it's been important to learn from the past, to have wisdom, to have long experience. And there's nothing wrong with those things, except sometimes they anchor us to ways of doing which served us and actually still serves us in terms of meeting KPIs in public service. But when we begin to think about the major things, the major challenges and consistent crisis, perma-crisis of our times, we need a different kind of leadership for that. And I think quite often that's the kind of leadership that we bring, which brings the outside in and maybe the inside out, and maybe sometimes is just outside. What do you think?
I think it's really interesting. I'm just going to say I wish I'd got my warm lights on because it's gone really dark here. So it's just like, but I love the fact that you've got your lights going on, because I think lights are so important, especially in the winter and being that. But in terms of leadership, and as you were just talking, it's interesting that that's your first ever leadership course, because there's leaders in every different aspect of our organizations. And that might be someone leading a project, it might be somebody in a role as a manager, but there's different things. And I think for me, as I said, as you were talking, I remember going on a course when I first joined Friends Centre, and the principal at the time said, I think this course is really good for you. It will really kind of give you an insight into adult education. And it was Juliet who kind of gave me that nod that actually you needed that professional development no matter what it was. And it wasn't a leadership course. Well, no, actually it was, because it was called Managing Better, although I hate the word manager. But that's something else maybe we can talk about at some point. But it was kind of looking at different aspects of managing a project or leading a project. So I really do think that it is important that you get either that outside perspective of different knowledge, and where does that come from? Now, you've, as I said at the beginning, you've led me to Karen Walrond, And that has led me to her kind of podcasts and her reading her book, um, the Lightmaker's Manifesto. There is that different knowledge set of I'm in this organization, I this is all I know, but you need that outside perspective, whether that is people like you and I going into an organization and opening people's eyes up. If that's not happening, then I think as an individual, you need to be able to go and look outside of where that is. And my thinking has been as well that when I was in a leadership position, our adult education organisation was very different to an FE college because we were a charity and we worked with inside the adult education arena, but we also looked at our charity arena and we were very much part of the third sector network that was happening in Brighton and Hove. And it was those kind of connections as well, looking at different charities and how they led and how they supported people, usually with very little funding, um, and where they were coming from. So I think you need those different perspectives to be able to help support. And as you said, we're in those, we're in crisis after crisis kind of thing, and um, we're just continuing almost on that conveyor belt or the rat race, and you need to be able to stop and get off and look around you because that could actually help you in the position you're in, and consider it because I think you need that support. And if it wouldn't hadn't have been for Joy FE at the time, it was the right thing at the right time when we were in lockdown and we were connecting and needed those connections online. And it's brought me a massive support group and network of colleagues and friends. So yeah, it's about looking outside or the outside coming in, I think is really important to help us um, lead in the right way.
Mm. Yeah, so much in there, so much to unpack. I'm thinking about how the excellent preparation for principalship course at Oxford Said in partnership with ETF. I have a friend who's a principal, and she still draws on the networks that she made, the community that she made there, working with other people, other leaders over a year. And they're the best kind of opportunities, aren't they? Thinking about how that sort of external perspective of being situated with the third sector in Brighton and Hove, as well as connections with community learning and how much that brings to us all. And FE is really powerful in that because of the work that we have all done to lead community and communities of practice and anti-competitive pro-social practice in FE. So we have this amazing landscape, which amplify FE very much, uh, draw together and present to us so people can find a way in. And I think that's really special and powerful. And yet it is still really important to get those views from the outside. I found it really refreshing last week on the EAUC Leadership Lab to be in a minority of FE people where the majority were from universities. That was really fresh to me. And in our like little sort of peer pods, there was always just one of us from FE and three or four from HE. They felt very balanced. It wasn't, but it was, yeah, I got particularly around student engagement and student activism, I got a really different view. just want to recommend here as well, in terms of that perma change. Anybody listening wants to sort of read more about that. Erica James and Lynn Perry Wotton, their book, their website is great, and they also did an excellent two-part, I think, Dare to Lead podcast with Brene Brown, which is well worth listening to, about the importance of preparedness for change in leadership. So we're coming to the end of our time, because we could bang on forever and we don't really want to. But hopefully we've left you with lots of food for thought, thinking about what leadership training is and how hopefully this is also part of it, because we'll be posing questions to you and hoping that you'll join in the conversation on LinkedIn when this is published. Thinking, and maybe you want to say a little bit more, Helen, about the work of Women's Leadership Network, and as with its many points of access for women in leadership in FE and beyond, and taking advantage of those opportunities. We've got a WhatsApp now from last week. I've got a WhatsApp with Green Change Makers, spaces where you can get other views to help you on your leadership journey, because it's not always about handing over the money and going on the training course, is it? It's about finding the lights, and the different kind of lights wherever they are. So do you want to close us out with a little view of what WLN are up to?
Yeah, I can do. Yeah, I've got in my head now an image of constellations, Lou, and all the lights, which takes me back to advanced practitioners training as well, and how all of those connections make. But you and I have been involved with Women's Leadership Network for a while now, and it's been around 30 years, which is which is scary when we talk about time. But in the last couple of years, we've had a change in funding, and we've looked at how we can continue some of the work that we did previously, and also what could be new with the people that we've got in that organization. So currently this month we launched our lunchtime light bulb moments, or our light bulb lunches, which is basically an hour session, taking the time, investing in yourself, to do some of that connecting, but also to try and find those light bulb moments of inspiration. And they're, as I said, they're running at lunchtime for an hour. We have literally launched this week, and it's specifically for those in FE or and skills, which is a menopause group coaching session, which is starting in February. We have some work that is going on around misogyny, and some work where one of us is working with the Department for Education on all of that. So there's lots going on, and it is that. And tomorrow we have a roundtable discussion on networks or collectives. So there is some great work, and it's really good to kind of look at LinkedIn, look up Women's Leadership Network and see what's going on, because it was a way of us continuing to connect, isn't it, Lou? As well as Joy FE in different aspects. And that gives you a different view on things as well. So take a look.
Fantastic. Hopefully, this has sparked some light bulb moments in you, maybe helped you see the light in yourself, because we all need reminding of that on a regular basis. And we'll do more. So, if you want us to talk about anything in particular to do with leadership, if you want to tell us about any brilliant leadership opportunities, like Helen's just talked about Women's Leadership Network, just let us know. And yeah, comment, ask questions, be in touch, keep the conversation going.
Thanks all.
Bye from us.